We're here.
We're here.
Hi.
And we're ready to roll. And of course, it is from a different location. One more day in Jersey, but then back to Florida. Jen, how's it going?
It's good. My little got accepted to a college today, which is very exciting.
Well, that is wonderful news.
I texted you.
You did. Well, I didn't see it. But
Okay.
Now, of course, I'm going to look, even though we're starting our show. Because, it's
because I did. I texted you.
Oh, guess who got into college? Okay. Well, I didn't see that. Well, I see it now. So, Graham Cracker Crunch, congratulations. You're on your way to becoming a well-adjusted young man. But we have a very special guest this evening, somebody who I know you especially have been wanting to speak to ever since you had a very thorough and thought-provoking podcast with Katie Halper. And
yes.
For those of you who obviously have been following very closely to the events as we have that have been going on in the Middle East, Daniel Mate is somebody who, much like his father and his brother, are very outspoken, as Jen is, as Jews being dead set against the genocide that Israel's inflicting on the Palestinian people. He's also the author of The Myth of Normal, Trauma, Illness, and Healing in a Toxic Culture. My God, are we living in a toxic culture now or what?
It's really it's not the time that you would want people to be experts in trauma, but yet here we are. You know what I mean? Like you don't want to have that, but yet we need that.
No, it is. And this is actually the first time and hopefully not the last time. Daniel Mate, welcome to Generational Change.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on our little show.
I was like 3 minutes ago years old when I realized this was a live stream.
Oh, is that bad?
No, it's fantastic. It's great.
I hear myself. Is it from you or Peter?
It's probably from me. Let me plug in some earphones.
Yeah, do something. So you didn't go get a haircut, did you, Peter?
No, I just decided, Daniel was going to be here and I decided to look good,
Oh, that's nice. Thank you. Thank you for being groomed.
Joke with me about my hair being shiny.
No.
I got a beard trim for this, but not much.
That's really nice. Thank you. I like the salt and pepper. I do. It's a thing. I do. And I am a fan of the facial hair. Thank you for coming on. I actually have been a fan of yours and Matt Lieb's Bad Hasbara. I've been watching that now. When did you guys start that?
Matt started the podcast in mid-December.
Okay, so it is new. It is fairly new.
It was really a pop-up podcast. It was one of these shows where just as a Jewish comedian in LA, surrounded by a lot of comedians who were saying less than nothing, on the topic, and noticing just the general climate of silencing. And he did what a real comedian does, which is he made jokes to keep himself sane, and in
Yeah.
so doing started keeping other people sane. I mean, he spoke at a rally in Hollywood, and there was a video clip of it that went kind of viral, and so people, and then he started doing these really funny skits of sort of imitating his liberal Zionist friends and family and kind of all of their prevarications. So he started it himself.
Okay.
I was the third guest. I met him the same week that he started the podcast, and he
Oh,
invited me to come on. I happened to be in LA, and I went to his studio, and I just came on as a guest. So I was a guest for episode 3, and the feedback was great, and he invited me back for episode 6. And then I think episode 8 or 9, and at a certain point, to quote the Brady Bunch, we knew that it was much more than a hunch. Like there was something going on, and I could, running a show by yourself is lonely, and we didn't have a producer yet. So yeah, as of February, I started being kind of the permanent temporary co-host, and then within a month or two, pretty much I'm there every episode unless I've got something else going on.
yeah. We need to make sure, Colin, if you would make sure that that's in the description, the Bad Hasbara, because it is fairly new, but it's an entertaining way of addressing something that's really horrible. And that's the thing. And because it's from Jewish people, I hate to say it, it's seemingly more acceptable to do it in that manner, right? Like, so it's just it's a good lane.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is, right? We're allowed to say things other people aren't allowed to say. I think this goes, it's sort of broadly or softly true across the board when you have members of particular groups saying counter-hegemonic things. If you're a member of that group, it gives you a certain lane to do that. And for us, the kind of humor we want to make, which is completely irreverent. I mean, good God, like we'll just, any pun available, we'll take it. I said, he was talking about Israeli gaslighting, and I'm like, yeah, they're sending us to the gaslight chambers. And, I've said to our non-Jewish listeners, do not try this kind of humor at home.
No, don't try this at home.
I'm not going to come for you if you do, but it's just probably not going to go well. Like, I'm not easily offended, but at the same time, depending on who's speaking, and black people know this better than anybody, right? Language depends on who's speaking, and it'll fall very flat coming from one mouth as opposed to the mouth of someone who has the standpoint that allows them to get all sides of it, and that the humor means something different depending on who's speaking.
Yeah.
So there's that, right? And at the same time, we're proudly Jewish enough that we can tell anyone who's leaning anti-Semite to fuck off, and like we try to keep the humor in a way that makes our position clear of where we're actually coming from, and trying to use one of the most Jewish things in the world, which is irreverent humor, gallows humor.
Yeah.
And reclaim it from the Zionists, because as Matt says, Israel thinks gallows humor is when the hangman does a stand-up set before he hangs the people. That's not what gallows humor is. It's a coping mechanism for the powerless. Will you excuse me just for a second? I just realized my air fryer is on, and my chicken strips are going to burn.
No, go ahead.
Yeah,
go.
No, this is all about hanging out and enjoying.
It's just hanging out and chilling. But I'm going to ask a serious question. Well, not a serious question, but I'm going to ask more of like a background question. Do you care?
I think that's also important because of your odyssey and what you went through, and I think that's actually a very
Okay, so this is something that I'm curious about, Daniel, as far as like, you were not raised Zionist, right? Like your father had already sort of seen the truth of that before, right? Okay, so because I was raised Zionist, like I was raised in that mindset and had to spend a lot of years deprogramming it. So what was it like for you? Because I know that, you probably didn't have that experience.
Yeah, it was different, and Matt's was different still. I mean, I don't think Matt grew up in a hardcore Zionist family, but he did go on birthright, so he was still in the market, right? I grew up in a family where my dad definitely already had been, red, green, and black pilled back even in the '60s when he was a student radical. So he was a young immigrant to Canada from Hungary, having already been disillusioned once by, finding out the truth about the great leader Stalin that he had worshipped as a kid, and then all of a sudden Soviet tanks are rolling into Budapest at age 13 or age 12, and this is after barely surviving the Holocaust thanks to the Red Army. So now the heroes have become the enemies. Then he gets to America and thinks, okay, great, shining city on the hill, freedom, whatever. Then he learns about Vietnam. And then it was Zionism, right? The salvation of the Jewish people. We're not going to be victims anymore. Redemption in our promised land. But right around the 1967 war, he started reading other accounts and realized that something called the Nakba happened. And so he was way ahead of the curve in terms of anti-Zionist Jews escaping from the cult of Zionism, because some Jews never bought into it, right? By the time I was born, he was already an activist on anti-imperialist causes, speaking out for the Sandinistas in Nicaragua, other victims of U.S. dirty wars in the 80s. And then the first time I became aware of this whole issue and his, what can I say? Yeah, heterodox stance on it was the first Intifada. Now, this set up an interesting conflict within me, or at least an interesting tension, because on the one hand, I had my father going on national radio in Canada, live from the West Bank, where he was there on a medical delegation, and he was weeping on the air, describing how he had been weeping every day for a week there, seeing Palestinian kids with so-called rubber bullets, American-made, in their skulls, or paralyzed or whatever, and him telling us when we bring our Jewish National Fund little tzedakah boxes home from Hebrew school, to plant, collect money, plant a tree in Israel.
Trees.
Right.
Yeah.
And he says, you mean uproot Palestinian olive groves? And I'm like, what's a Palestinian? So I was getting this from him. At the same time, he sent me and my two siblings to a Zionist summer camp. Now, it was a left-wing, kibbutz-oriented labor Zionist summer camp that was as progressive as you could get inside the Zionist framework, which meant that they would talk proudly about Arab-Jewish coexistence groups and land for peace, and they would tell us about the occupation. And some of the more progressive counselors there would talk about human rights violations and torture and things like that. So we were aware that Israel had gone astray, but that already presumes that Israel itself, there's something salvageable about the notion of an ethno-state. And that camp was very fond of it. Now, why did my dad send us there? I don't know. It was the best game in town. The other alternatives were, wasn't really a secular, non-nationalistic, like Yiddishkeit alternative at the time, really. All my friends went there. His brothers had both been camp directors there. I actually, it turns out, I always forget about this, but on my mom's side, my mom's uncle, my paternal grandfather's youngest brother, Ralph Moster, was an Air Force pilot in 1948 in the Haganah, and he died in the 1948 war. Somehow I always omit that, but I actually have that in my family history. For all I know, my great uncle bombed Arab villages.
Right.
So it's this complicated, and I need to learn more about the story. I'm sure it'd be actually fascinating to know. But the point is, I grew up exposed to the fact that there was another side, and finding it morally quite compelling, and finding the Jewish community increasingly disgusting as they tried to censor my father and call him a capo. And I mean, I'm telling you, this word is not new to me,
Right.
and getting death threats or hate mail from Jews all over the country. And I just knew any group that behaves this way, that doesn't want to hear from one member of the group who's speaking out for the rights of another member, they must be wrong, just on strict whatever grounds. And I didn't know, I hadn't yet read Chomsky or Said or anything like that. I didn't know the full history, but my spidey senses told me that any group that behaves this hysterically when their narrative is challenged must be hiding something, at least from themselves, if not from others. So that was the complicated tension. But I still went back every summer, and I became a summer camp counselor and then a program director there.
Wow.
And in my final act as a program director, I tried to do, in fact, I did. We did a full special day basically about the Nakba. Not in detail, but a day that fundamentally tried to challenge the notion that uncomplicatedly we got there.
Right.
We took an empty land, we made it better, and no harm, no foul. If it weren't for those meddling Arabs, we'd have peace, you know. And we really complicated it, and we presented the Palestinian side of things in a way that was upsetting enough to the Israeli counselors that they had a hard time going through with it, but they did. And it felt like it was my last act of trying to take this youth group to the very farthest edges of where it can go while still calling itself Zionist or post-Zionist or whatever. And after that, I aged out of it, and it was just as well, because they haven't really moved too far. I mean,
they stay stuck.
They're still clinging.
Yeah. At the end of the day, they all still believe that a Jewish state should exist. That is the premise, regardless of what's happening with the Palestinians. And it's fascinating. Like I was not raised by people that were so educated and had access to information and had I didn't have that. So it was very different. Like my grandparents were not so sharp. My parents didn't, they really had to just work to survive. Like it wasn't a matter of time to go exploring academia.
Yeah.
And so that's really, I think that's something that most people don't have. And that's the thing, that's a very unique situation to come from that level of awareness at that age. And by the way, for people who don't know, what the era was about December of 87.
Yep.
Right? Yeah.
Starting then, yeah. Yeah, my dad's not an academic by any means. He's not a scholar, but he's very well read, and he's, in some ways, always been a public intellectual, but always been an activist too. But he was a family doctor back then. He was just, but he was just a Jew who wouldn't shut up about what he thought the lesson of the Holocaust really was, which was never again for anyone. And he was a Holocaust survivor who wasn't going to let the mainstream Jewish community unopposed, just use the martyrdom of his grandparents and his and my grandparents' near extermination to be used to justify the dispossession of other people.
Yeah.
Speaking with Daniel Mate, from where I stand on the outside looking in, I can't even imagine what it's like. Obviously, where we are down here in South Florida, and the level of power that the Zionist community definitely holds, not just with Wasserman Schultz, but, a number of other blockades between Miami and West Palm Beach. And I'm just thinking, the more that this continues and the worse that it gets, and the more that it gets exposed, especially right now in lieu of the election being 7 weeks from tomorrow, I'm wondering if you think that they fully understand, the Zionists fully understand, that there has been this cross of a point of no return with this movement, that what they have done and what they have set in motion, it's not just the drastically underreported number of people that have been murdered, probably something close in the neighborhood of, probably 250,000 now when you consider everybody who's buried under rubble. It's, as Jenna's pointed out,
or who will die from the diseases that are already affecting
mass famine, disease, all things like that. The what will set in for multiple generations, the amount of jihad that will grow from this, from so many people. Is there? Do you think that there is this sort of understanding in the Zionist movement, even to have some inkling? Because I've been saying for a while, the Zionists are going to win a lot in the short term, but in the long term, they're going to lose everything. Do you think that there's enough people in that movement who are maybe starting to understand that circumstance? So you think that they're still completely oblivious to that reality?
There's different levels to that reality, and I think that reality doesn't hit people all at once, generally speaking, when they're that deeply entrenched in an ideological worldview. So I think they're probably keeping an eye on different fronts. The propaganda war is a big one that they're keeping an eye on. And I think they must, and I've spoken to, I don't write, I just walk around with my phone and talk to Instagram. But I've done videos about this where it can't be fun right now defending Israel, because you can see that there's just been a sea change in the Jewish community itself, never mind the rest of the world. Even among Jews, there are very few families, I would imagine, in America now, Jewish families, where there isn't some 1 or 2 degrees of separation from someone who's broken ranks. It's a large number of Jews want a ceasefire. A large number of American Jews, and Norman Finkelstein called this 15 years ago. He wrote a book called Knowing Too Much, the coming a breakup of American Jewry with Israel. You can't be liberal, which most American Jews fundamentally consider themselves to be, and support that state in the way it carries on, and it's the way it'll necessarily continue to carry on. So I think people are noticing that people's minds are changing, and they're probably also noticing that the door only swings one way. You're not going to get those people back. Once someone sees that, in fact, the state that you've been inculcated to support your entire life is, you don't want to call it apartheid, you don't want to call it genocide, just a bunch of fucking maniacs. Just really crazy and obnoxious and fascistic and militaristic and inhumane. Like, once you see what's happening to that society and you realize that the rot really is coming from the inside, there is really no going back, you know? So I think people, I get the sense that there's, you know, and Jonathan Greenblatt on the ADL, there was an intercepted call where he said, we don't have a right-left problem, we have a young-old problem.
Yep.
The TikTok generation. And what he's saying is, we've lost the kids. Now they're doing their best to try and get them back, but I think they know that's a losing battle. As far as, do they know how much trouble they're in, they're going to keep, like, in terms of like Israel being able to keep this going, there's 2 problems with that. Number one, they're in a lot less trouble than the 3 of us would wish, because of American support.
Yeah.
American support can keep this thing going way past its expiry date. And when you have Netanyahu coming to, you know, the Washington Aquarium, aka Congress, and having all these clapping seals stand up for him and bounce balls on their noses 58 times, right? I mean, Max Blumenthal got in a lot of trouble for making a Zog joke, you know, one nation under Zog. And yeah, it's an anti-Semitic term, but Max was using it sardonically. And it's, you know, at a certain point, it's like, what are we supposed to say to people? No, it's not a conspiracy. Like, no, there is no secret cabal of Zionists to run the world. And our government is completely captured by the interests that, including Christian Zionists, that are propelling this state towards apocalypse and dragging us all with it. So there's still a lot of fuel in that tank for Israel to keep going, because Israel relies on the largesse of the American taxpayers and the politicians who hold the purse strings in their names. The other side of it is they're addicts, and addicts are always very slow to wake up. And bottom comes very, hits you very fast.
It's a cult.
It's a cult, and a cult has a lot of inner, surprising amount of resilience for keeping its worldview going until it can't anymore. There were a lot of Germans who thought that Germany was going to win the war until all of a sudden they found out that, you know, the dear leader had shot himself, and it was
everyone always thinks they're going to win until they lose.
That's right.
Right? Like,
That's
empires live as long as they do until they fail. I am a little bit more hopeful that even though we are totally in with them and we're going to keep supplying them, the rest of the world isn't having it, and they're having a lot of issues. They're having a lot of economic issues in Israel right now. They're having a lot of internal governmental issues. So they're imploding on their own governmentally and economically, is what it looks like, what I'm hearing. Also, I know there are several countries that have just stopped dealing with them because it's not worth it to go all the way around Africa. Like, there's all these things that are going on. We just don't hear a lot about it in Western media.
Absolutely.
Because we don't want anything to make Israel not look, strong. But as somebody who prioritizes media on all different continents, that's not how the world sees it. And there are things going on, like whether it's Colombia's trade agreement with Israel, like there's different things that are going on where they're going to lose economically. And at the end of the day, that's going to be their end.
I think Yeah, I think there's a lot to that. I was at a panel yesterday. Jewish Currents had an event here in New York City. A lot of different panels. A lot of different people were there. But I was at a panel, an all Palestinian panel that ended the day. Noura Erakat was a part of it.
Oh, nice.
And I forget who it was who said this, one of the Palestinian speakers. It wasn't Noura, but he said, what we need to do is to turn Israel from a startup nation into a shutdown nation. In other words, just make it really, really clear to all of, the whole tech sector,
Yeah.
this is just a black hole. And that's already happening. Something
Yeah.
like 64,000 businesses or something like that. I might be getting the number wrong, but in the 5 figures have shut down since October 7th.
It's closed businesses and lack of investments.
That's right.
There's a lot of investments that have pulled out, a lot of projects that are not going to happen. And so not to mention, they have tons of people living in basically exile because they're not having anybody. They've cleared out the North.
Mm-hmm.
They've cleared out the South. Like how long did they think that they're going to be able to exist like that?
Right.
I mean, I don't know. It's their hubris really knows no bounds.
No, it's their chief national export. It's incredible, actually.
Right.
But these are necessary illusions, and you see the toll on ordinary Israelis. And nothing I'm going to say here is to absolve the Israeli public of not only the sort of silent complicity, but the ongoing cheerleading that they've done for what their government is doing. And at the same time, this is a very confused population that's been bamboozled and sold a bill of goods by their own country, and they're feeling the pain. And I saw an interview with a guy on the street, like literally a man on the street interview, side of a highway, talking about how he's going insane. He can't sleep at night. His kids are all having mental health issues. His wife is miserable. The whole country is depressed. He's giving the government 2 more weeks to solve this and bring the hostages home, or else I will never support you again. And I'm sure he said that before. They've been completely gaslit and emotionally abused by their own government.
Kind of like us.
Kind of like us, but with even more a higher level of, what can I say?
Oh, they're Lord of the Flies now.
Yeah, it's nuts, right?
They're out of control. This is not normal behavior.
So no, it's not normal behavior, and it's not a normal level of psychological, emotional, cognitive dissonance and stress to be living under. So I've said this before, it's a weird thing to wish for or hope for, but I know Israel's collapse is going to happen on a lot of fronts.
Yeah.
I'm looking to the internal collapse. I'm looking to the nervous breakdown. Because to anyone who's gone the wrong way in life and is doing wrong and is harming themselves and extremely harming others, you kind of hope that their own system, in a certain sense, gives in. And that's the only time that there might be a wake-up call. If it's an external attack,
right.
This also seems very unlucky. But every time, quote unquote, the Arabs do something to harm Israel, it's another epinephrine shot into the fucking sternum of Uma Thurman, in Pulp Fiction, and it just wakes up and it's like, okay, well, let's go get him. But watching it, Israel's its core narrative, its core mythos is togetherness, us, the Jewish people, and there's something that I take some sick satisfaction in. Maybe it's not sick, but it's grim.
No, they're sick.
They're sick. My satisfaction is grim, in the sense that you're finding out what a brittle, fragile, and very ephemeral notion that is of this Jewish nation. The Palestinians are a nation. Sitting in this panel yesterday with 5 different Palestinians with very different views on a lot of key things, there was just a real sense that these people know where they're from and they know what they belong to.
Yeah.
And I just don't get that sense when Jews are together, even Zionists. All that's keeping them together is a kind of
sense of entitlement
and a story to go along with it.
Yeah, it's the whole thing's absurd at this point. I don't understand how But I do know, and I can say this just from personal experience, the people are migrating from Israel in droves.
Yes, Cyprus is the
The
new
exodus is huge. I
Jewish
want to
state.
say how many people in the past year they've lost like 1 million people. They've lost a ton of people, and most of them are now coming here to my club Pilates. Unfortunately for me, that is how I know that they're bleeding people, because our population here of Israelis is off the charts now.
That's the real refugee crisis.
That's my real problem right there. That is a crisis for the people that were. Yes, I don't want that.
Do they eat cats?
They might eat cats, but I don't know. I don't want to get that close.
They eat at Katz's Deli.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
You know, we can transition a little bit into electoral politics. You know, I'm not convinced that there aren't little, I guess what you would call startups in Brooklyn and, you know, just different parts of the city and different parts of the country, DC, San Francisco, where you have these bot farms that basically just parade the same talking points day in and day out about, well, we can't let Trump win because it'll just get worse. You're going to have to accept this form of genocide. Kamala's not going to change. She's made it very clear she's not going to change. She has to win first, and then she's going to change.
Right, that'll make it better.
I'm curious if you think that, you know, they like to always say the talking point that Jill Stein cost Hillary Clinton the election in 2016. That's funny. But I actually do think that Jill Stein could actually have a profound impact on the impact of this actual election. I do think she actually can swing Michigan and possibly Georgia as well. And I think that the freakouts that you're seeing on social media to such an, I've never seen it like this before. I mean, the difference this time is that I think that they really are just basically telling them to go fuck themselves. Like at this point, they don't care. They're like, we know the system is broken beyond repair. We're going to force its change at some point. So let's just get it over with and rip off the Band-Aid, as Jen likes to say. How much of an impact do you think, and is there going to be some type of a mass exodus, do you think, away from the two-party system? Is there something different about this particular election cycle with the genocide in the background as a means to potentially forcing some type of a systemic change within the system we currently have?
Well, whereas I like to think of myself as an expert on everything, I try to do that in the privacy of my own home when no one is listening. I'm Canadian. I don't even vote in the United States.
Hey,
so get a vote here.
What's that?
Why did we invite you on? You don't even get a vote.
Exactly. I just pop off as if I know something. I'm completely useless to you. So I don't know, and I don't prognosticate too confidently about electoral politics. I'll just tell you what I'm observing kind of energetically, and you know, the Dems are sure obsessed with Jill Stein these past couple of weeks, and they're sure being desperate about it. I mean, when AOC came out with their little, okay guys, I have some thoughts, and they're kind of spicy.
Totally organic too.
Yeah. I'm like, this is going to be about as spicy as like Tim Walz's kids' lunch bags, you know, like,
right,
like this is maybe some MSG, but no spice. It really reeked of desperation. And, you know, and now you've got like Mehdi Hassan, like doing his like, oh, I'm going to nail you, Jill Stein. Like he, you know, interviewed her, and Mehdi's been great on the genocide, but like fundamentally when the Democratic Party comes calling, he's there to like really hold the quote unquote irrelevant people's feet to the fire, you know, like have you called Putin a war criminal today? Have you thrown a dart at your Assad dartboard in the past week? Prove it, you know. Whereas he'll never, as my brother pointed out on Twitter, he'll never call Joe Biden a war criminal. He'll never call Kamala Harris a war criminal, which, if he believes what he's saying about the genocide, is ipso facto the case and much, much, much more relevant. But they've certainly tried. And then, you know, Jill Stein went on the Breakfast Club and got, you know, the
treatment.
The treatment, right? And I think she gave them the business too.
And a very good point, if I could piggyback on that, you know, Angela Rye, and I don't want to single out anybody in particular, but, you know, Angela Rye goes on the Breakfast Club, and the only things that she really cared about was the mispronunciation of Kamala's name, apparently that's a big triggering point for her. And then whether or not Jill Stein is going to cost the Democrats the election. Meanwhile, today, she just posted photos and video from the weekend about this wonderful caucus gala that she went to over the weekend, dressed in probably like a $5,000 outfit. And it's like, you for those who know our show, know who we listen to, I recommend listening to Tim Black. Listen to his perspective, because he'll really tell you how the Black community is really feeling about the people that will go on TV and tell you that you can't have it better. This is what you're left with. You either take a little bit of crumbs here and there, but honestly, I see people, they've had enough. Like, you can't pull the wool over their eyes anymore. And I think the genocide was the straw that will ultimately break the camel's back. There is no going back from this.
I'm glad to hear that. I mean, and Tim has always been someone who will call it like it is. And I'm glad to hear that he's doing that. I haven't watched this stuff in a while, but that's great. I mean, and of course, Jill had Butch Ware with her, and you're not going to, you might get Jill a little tongue-tied on a show like The Breakfast Club because you don't exactly know how to position yourself. But Butch was just like, okay, can I tell you what Malcolm X said? Can I tell you what James Baldwin said?
Right. Perfect, a perfect transition, because we're going to play a quick clip.
We're going to play a James Baldwin clip?
Okay. No, this is even better. For those of you who are not, well, if you're not familiar with Butch Ware, he is the vice presidential candidate
he's awesome.
Green Party ticket. And this is a slice of what he was discussing the other day when he was on The Breakfast Club, and he basically just had it at this point. So
can we show the clip of him working out? Because that was much better for me.
Fair enough. But no, this is a little bit more relevant here.
Okay.
So here we go.
Personally offended by the way that blackness is being weaponized in this electoral cycle in order to justify white supremacist genocide in Gaza.
Expound.
Please, yeah.
Malcolm said of Zionism, of the Zionist state, the Israeli state, he said that this is a white Jewish population, the Ashkenazi population, being given power by white imperialists to remove brown Arabs from their land. He said, so therefore Zionism is white supremacy. In 1979, Open Letter to the Born Again, James Baldwin said the same thing. He said the state of Israel was not created for the salvation of the Jews. It was created for the salvation of Western interests. When you go through Kwame Ture, Malcolm X, James Baldwin, Toni Morrison, Angela Davis, Assata Shakur, these are all people that cited the Palestinian resistance movement, not even to bring in the Africans, right? Not to mention Nelson Mandela, not to mention Thomas Sankara, who talked about Zionism as being the face of imperialism in the Middle East, right? This is what the Black radical tradition taught me. And the Black radical tradition taught me that if we weaponize our blackness in favor of white supremacy, then we become apostates from blackness itself, because blackness is not a race. It is an oppositional ideology to white supremacy. I'm a historian of Africa by training. Never before in human history had people speaking hundreds of different languages made themselves into one people, developed a common culture so that you and I can relate to one another. You and I can relate to one another on the basis of a shared culture. And we got our Latin and Caribbean brothers and sisters, especially Puerto Ricans and Dominicans, but also, more broadly, right? They share in that culture.
This is so immensely important to be said, and to be said by somebody like him. And listen, we have people that are liberal on our show. We have a fellow Kanucky here, and this is what he has to say about.
I know, but you know what? Seriously.
But there's also, but Daniel, can you talk to the fear that I think a lot of white suburbanites really do have about fundamental change? How people like Butch Ware scare them?
Oh, he's scary.
I mean, look, we're in a cult too, in the sense that, it's not really a cult. It's a gated community. It's a gated, where, and I'm not going to exclude myself from this. And I know the word privilege gets thrown around in ways that kind of, people feel like it kind of shuts things down, like it's kind of conversation ender. Check your privilege at the door, and now it's like some kind of demerit or some kind of like poison health, like anti-health bar on a video game. Like the more privilege you have, the closer you are to like game over, and you're not allowed to speak because you have privilege or something like that. Like it's a demerit or something like that. I try to think of it in more neutral terms. We all have blind spots, right? which means, and as human beings, we all have blind spots. Just what it is to be human, right? I can only see what I can see. I'm a person. Now, some of us, by virtue of the groups we're born into, black people have had to understand white people and their psychology in America better than white people have had to understand black people. Just to survive. That's just how it is. Palestinians understand Israelis much better than Israelis understand Palestinians.
Absolutely.
That's just how it is. Women, generally speaking, understand men. This is, it doesn't cut so exactly cleanly, but there are many, there are a lot of ways in when it comes to sexual dynamics and gender dynamics that women see through men's stuff and have insight, including compassionate insight into what men are dealing with, because they have to understand the danger. They have to understand where the danger is coming from. So someone like Butch is coming from a tradition, which is a rich intellectual tradition, of analyzing the systems that keep resources out of the hands of his people and keep rights out of the hands of his people and keep his people in immiserated conditions. I actually don't know Butch's full identity. I don't know what his exact background is, but if he's claiming blackness, then he's coming from a tradition that has long been observing the way white people carry on this continent and throughout the world. So I can get that can be scary when someone says, well, when someone is, to use a black expression, reading you for filth, right? Like, in a sense, or is that a gay expression? I think maybe it's a black gay expression. But reading, you see through someone, and you're able to actually speak to, you're able to see things about them that they can't see about themselves. Well, that's not comfortable. That's not comfortable. But that's what he's doing here. And the black radical tradition is filled with some of the most brilliant minds that America has ever produced. Yeah. Just like it's exactly analogous to the jazz tradition is full of the greatest musicians America has ever produced. Hip hop is full of the greatest wordsmiths that America has ever produced. Not exclusively, but disproportionately. Comedy is full of American Jews. Why? Because our outsider position gave us an angle on life and on America and on non-Jews that gave us a kind of, and on ourselves, that allowed us to articulate things in ways that couldn't be articulated by others. So if I'm understanding the comment, like, fuck his black radical politics, I'd say, what are you afraid of? Like, just listen to what the guy's saying. Check it out. If you're not interested in what he's saying, that's fine. But your hostility tells me that you're more than not interested. You're threatened by it on a certain level. And if you're threatened by it, then he's probably saying something correct. It's never comfortable to hear things about ourselves that, and as far as giving up privilege and whatever, no, you might just have to give up a blind spot. You might just have to go out into the world and see it differently. And look, it's also just a function of I'm dating someone younger than me. And so, who's technically a millennial. And she is able to speak to me about the world in ways that I find threatening to my worldview, because things have changed in the world of, say, social justice and whatever, on a whole lot of whatevers. And I'm a leftist, right? Like, I'm a good leftist radical. But I still don't want to hear it. I'm not trying to hear it because I know everything.
Right.
And these young people, well, I might be able to see things about them. That's true. I might be able to have some skepticism about certain developments in discourse and culture or whatever. But what are the odds that she isn't in possession of some insights that I'm lacking that I could benefit from if I could open myself to? So that's the humility piece. And that's the also, do you want to be in relationship with people? Do you want to reach black voters? If you want to reach black voters, and if you want to have black neighbors and be an American who's not living in a racist bubble, the black radical tradition, you got to reckon with it.
Yeah.
You gotta find out what the hell they're talking about.
Yeah. It's actually really special. I don't see, that's the thing. I can see why people find it threatening. But as somebody who actually did study some of that in college, it's really special. And there's something that really just, it's the American version of the fight of the oppressed. Like this continuous global suffering of oppressed people that's been constant since the beginning of time. And our tradition of it in this country is so best like addressed by that group of people, that radical tradition. Like,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
it's very rich.
Look, even just on the level of sheer oratory power, if you're not interested in Malcolm X, you're missing out. You're just missing out on a great mind and a great speaker and a great satirist too, of being able to poke hole. I mean, he's crucial. He's seminal. And you know, this person is now popping off in the comments talking about how they're, I won't even say his because I don't know what his sex or gender is, but his hostility is awesome. Cool, your hostility is awesome, bro. Like, go for it.
Yeah,
Enjoy
I don't
it.
know.
I'm not gonna try and take it away from you. I'm suggesting to you that if you're serious, if you're not being irony pilled here, and you're just rejecting the black radical tradition on some crazy, like, you're missing out on what America, a big piece of what makes America actually great.
Okay, well, I don't know why they're freaking out about the Ukraine war.
We'll get to that in a minute. Let's finish.
This has nothing to do with Ukraine. What I want to say is, why are you comparing somebody to their brother? First of all, Daniel does not say he's a journalist. That's not his shtick. Like, why would you be thinking, like, so because his brother says something, he should say, like, what is wrong with you people? Why can't, like...
Well, first of all, I've yet to hear my brother say anything that's ever been challenged factually. Whenever people come at him, they call him names. They call him
they're saying you don't comment on.
I don't know if you know this or not, but when Anna Kasparian came for your brother, we let her have it in such a way that she really got pissed off at Jen. Like, I found out, like, really did not like it, what we did.
Yeah, well, that was some cowardly shit that she and Cenk pulled, you know.
Right.
Amen.
I'm very protective of journalists because at heart, that's where that's what I went to school for. Like, I think, like, to me, I think very highly of that. So I will always stand up for that. But no, they're bitching about that you haven't commented on the Ukraine proxy war, even though your brother has, as if somehow.
Would you like me to? Is that a request? I don't usually.
Would you like me to finish this segment and then we will move on to the.
Okay.
No. Let me just make a quick comment. Okay, this is my comment on the Ukraine proxy war. The Ukraine war is a proxy war. And the U.S. stoked it, and they don't want it to end, and they got in the way of the negotiation. This is what I understand to be the case, and we should have a government that doesn't want to provoke World War III just to make Raytheon and Northrop Grumman rich. And
exactly.
The Democrats are just as guilty of this as the Republicans are. In fact, the Republicans happen to have a small block of them who at least nominally claim to care about America first. So that is my comment on the Ukraine proxy war. It sucks and it should end.
I don't understand. Oh, because the podcast is dead silent on the proxy war. Okay, first of all, not everybody's show has to cover everything. That's not how this works. People can focus on what matters most to them. That show came out of this genocide.
Applebee's is dead silent on sashimi. You know, it really is.
Oh my God! So now I'm being subscribed because Matt Leib's wife works for TY. Get a life.
Yeah. I can assure you that there are trolls everywhere, and let them comment because more people will find the stream as a result.
People are just a little too online, which is a strange thing to say because we rely on people being online. But I'll say this: Bad Hasbara is a clearinghouse for anyone who does good work on Palestine. It's a one-issue program, which means that Matt's wife has been on, as has my brother. Those two people would probably not agree on a whole lot of foreign policy things. We had Emma Vigeland of the Majority Report, who, you know, that's not my favorite program for obvious reasons. Yeah. But Emma was a great guest on this topic. And we had my brother from the Gray Zone, and we've had Nora Barrows-Friedman twice or three times from the Electronic Intifada, and David Sheen from the Electronic Intifada. You know, we're trying to build a temporary tent in which people can get together and create a sane, not a safe space, but a sane space to speak about the genocide in Gaza and the crisis of Zionist imperial lunacy.
Yeah.
And we'll you know, I've I made a whole video on Instagram like criticizing Mehdi Hassan for the framing of his debate with Eylon Levy. I'd happily have Mehdi on the show. Like, it's a rather diffuse mandate we have.
Yeah.
So I really, frankly, we don't give a shit about all these internecine, intra-left things, even though I'm related to someone who's been totally unfairly smeared and targeted, and I've had conversations with him, and he's like, absolutely have these people on. We're talking about Gaza here later for all those other disagreements. So if you're not getting your like rocks off the way you want, because like everyone, like you're not getting the content exactly curated, like the dim sum a la carte content you want, like num 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 num, Ukraine proxy war, anti-NATO, blah blah blah, and you're getting like a mix of things. Well, it's kind of a smorgasbord. Help yourself. Have what you want.
Well, let's let the real liberation guy take us out with this clip.
It's a miracle. It's never happened before in human history, because what happened is that an oppositional identity to white supremacy came into being, and that is us. And when I see that identity now being weaponized to justify the most heinous genocide in our time, like Harriet Tubman is rolling over in her grave right now. Sojourner Truth is rolling over in her grave right now. Bell Hooks is rolling over in her grave right now. Who did I miss? Do you know what I'm saying? The idea that we would weaponize something as sacred as black womanhood and then utilize this to justify blowing up Palestinian kids.
He's right.
I will say, all those people were amazing. Actually, Bell Hooks was one of my first introductions into like black feminism. And it was, yeah. So I appreciate that list of people.
Where's the lie?
How do you see this election unfolding at this point? Honestly, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, as far as I'm concerned.
And you have no horse in this race. You can leave and go back up north to the great white yonder.
I can, but I love you guys too much. I can't leave. I think I like it up there.
I think you just feel bad for us. Like, we're so pathetic.
No, man.
It's too many. If you're like if you're into like the left scene, the art scene, and all that music scene, I mean, New York City is a special place. I moved to New York. I moved to New York to do a Master's of Fine Arts in Musical Theater Writing. This place invented that. This place invented hip hop. I'm a 2-time finalist for the Hip Hop Karaoke Championship of New York City.
Oh.
America, like I said, invented the blues and jazz. I love America. Canada has produced a lot of great American imports. Joni Mitchell, Gordon Lightfoot, Neil Young. Brian Adams, Shania Twain, Avril Lavigne. Drake, who, last I heard, is not like us. But the point is, it's a great, and look at the Emmys the other night. Catherine O'Hara, Eugene Levy, Martin Short, a lot of great comedians.
That whole group.
SCTV,
is like the whole Second City group. Yeah,
and kids in the Hall, of course. I like being from Canada, and I don't mind being in Canada. But do you think Canada is much better politically? It's just,
no.
It's shitty, but much more boring. So I'm happy to be here. How do I see this election playing out? I really don't know. I mean, if you have to think at some point, if people keep trying to assassinate Trump, one of two things should happen. Either it'll succeed, or it'll cause him to win, or maybe both. But neither of those things seem to be happening. It's very strange. I never underestimate the Democrats' ability to patronize and condescend to voters and be out of touch and just kind of lose a winnable election, by being as off-putting as possible and totally unself-aware. But then again, Trump doesn't have much juice. I mean, he's really not who he was. He's unfocused. It's down to a battle of personalities and subcultures at this point, and I truly have no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We are kind of circling the drain, which is unfortunate. But
I actually think that they're just replaying 2016, and just insert Kamala instead of Hillary, and I think that they're going to get the same result. I do. And I think between now and then, she's only going to continue to go down. And every time they attack him, he's like a martyr. And it's just this, there's no there with her. And the more people see it, the more they're going to know it. Like you can't put enough lipstick on the pig, right? Like, I mean, that's not going to work. And I think she has Hillary's level of disgusting condescension. She's like the worst combination of Hillary and Obama to me. Like, really, like I can't, I'm not a Trump supporter. I've never liked him. But I got to tell you, if I have to sit here and pick, like if there's a gun to my head and I got to pick between 4 years of that guy, or potentially 8 to 12 or however many more years of a Clinton agenda, which is basically what would happen, we're better off taking the 4 years and running. It's a Band-Aid. I also do not think that who's she going to appoint to Director of Health and Human Services? Some Pfizer exec, some big pharma person? He's at least talking with people like RFK or Tulsi Gabbard, or people that have spoken truth to power in some capacity, which to me is just better. I don't agree with Tulsi on a ton of stuff.
Thing that really
I'd rather have that than Wall Street.
The thing that's really concerning that she's doing right now, probably more than anything else, is the fact that she is touting her economic agenda based on what Goldman Sachs is telling her to say. And that should scare the living shit out of everybody, because it isn't just the domestic policy, that's foreign policy as well. They are the most powerful investment firm in the world. And if this is the person, if this is the conglomerate that she is leaning on, the genocide is enough. Yep. But you add in this whole other layer and it gets very, very scary. Trump's scary enough.
It's both bad, but I think that what we're better off getting it over with. It's a Band-Aid. I mean, what could happen with 8 years of Clintonism and the appointments that they would make and the people that they would bring in? And I mean, I don't think people understand that we could potentially end up with someone worse than Trump. Like it's not going to just get better.
Right.
Like it's got to get really.
It's true, but I mean, we could also end up with someone worse than Trump via Trump. Like I don't, just because he's just so chaotic, and he's not immune to being swayed and flattered by neocons. I mean, look, John Bolton and Mike Pompeo and all these fuckers. Yeah, there was some populist language at the RNC. There was also a lot of old school, Lindsey Graham is still a very powerful Republican. Mitch McConnell is still a very powerful Republican. So I don't really know. I mean, but again, look, you're in this, right?
Yeah.
You're in this in a way that I'm not. I'm observing from the sidelines, and I have the quote unquote privilege to be like, don't ask me what to do.
Look at it, but look at this. So who did Biden bring into his administration? People like Elliot Abrams and Victoria Nuland.
Oh, sure.
So if you're bringing in people like that, okay, then there's no difference with that. So I'm going to go with at least the more unpredictable and hope for the best. But the idea, I feel like the Clinton economics and all of that is really what led us to the hole that we're in right now, substantially. And the idea of going with that again just seems really stupid.
Well, certainly the idea of going with that and not expecting the backlash to be uglier than anything we've seen. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel you, and I have sympathies in that direction. At the same time, he's such a clown.
Yeah.
And he's so volatile, and he's so venal, and he really is capable of whole cloth invention on low, and with real cruelty as well, and we've seen it in the ways he can, and the people he's surrounded. I mean, I think that J.D. Vance is just such a little toad, and there are real base instincts. I don't love the liberal tendency to use populist as a slur. I think it's very elitist and really misunderstands and also really cedes what should be leftist ground to the right, And at the same time, there can be a kind of nastiness and nativism and xenophobia and a willingness to just throw whoever under the bus in a bid to try and save some mythical America that doesn't exist, that can not even sneak its way, can just stow away inside that kind of politics. And you know, whatever made Trump compelling in the first place, which was his willing to say fuck you to Jeb Bush and thumb his nose at the Iraq War and that whole dynasty and call out neoliberals for what they are and neoconservatives for what they are. If he doesn't have that, discernment, then it goes from, you know, chaotic neutral at best to potentially chaotic quite evil, you know, to put it in Dungeons and Dragons speak. But
I've said this before. I've said it before. I'm a stable genius. If you call me dangerous, you are a terrible person. Believe me when I tell you, you're really barking up the wrong tree. I run New York. I'm going to run it again, and I'm going to put you on the watch list if you're not careful. No Canadians allowed in anymore. I'm not just doing the Muslims. I'm doing the Canadians too. They don't even vote for me anymore.
That's a great impression, except that's a great impression. It's, if anything, a little too stable, but it's very, very good.
They're coming into our country. Have you seen what they're doing in Springfield, Ohio?
Okay, did you see this guy?
What's going on in Saskatchewan? Saskatchewan. We need to send someone up to Saskatchewan.
Send it to
figure out
Saskatchewan.
What's going on.
It's a great word, big word. I know the best words. You know, but he's let's put it this way. We're going to be stuck in the clown show of entertainment for 4 years if we get him. But it's still going to have the undercurrents of fascism. And then, of course, you also have what has become this completely engulfed neoliberal party that is the Democrats. And the fact that
I don't accept the premise that they're not at all fascist.
Yeah.
They have plenty of fascism in them, too.
Yeah. No, it's definitely, it's gotten to the point of a level of intensity that I think is beyond dangerous, but I still look at it as the economic system's broken. The political system is broken. Canada has a lot of problems, but at least for the time being, you know, that could change, especially with somebody like Trudeau. You do have universal education and healthcare. We do not have that. You also have some semblance of a somewhat moderate government. Our government is completely captured by corporate special interests. And now it's becoming so brazenly obvious to the average person. And when that happens, that's when you know you've reached the point of no return, because now people don't trust elections anymore. And once you've reached that consensus with millions of people, look, Trump does it for self-serving purposes, but there are a lot of reasons to believe that our elections are not on the level. And especially with as much money is invested in this. Look, somebody just pointed out the other day, the fact that there are betting markets on whether Harris or Trump wins is so dangerous. And the idea that that's even being brought into the conversation now, I think really says a lot.
I would think that happens every time.
Well, no, but it's happening now, especially because now we are entering this sort of new, you want to say age of enlightenment. I hope that's what it is, but it's going to be.
I'm not feeling people are enlightened. I'm not seeing a whole lot of enlightenment.
We'll see what happens. I do think that people are getting there, but as Daniel, as you've said, and it's the perfect way to wind down this conversation. It's
I
like
just had to
Zionism.
put it through in timeout.
I understand. And
All right,
I look
just
at it
saying.
as there's going to be different levels of evolution that people are going to take in order to get out from this. Because I do think that there is also a huge portion of the Jewish population that keeps their mouth shut because they don't want to deal with the narcissism and sociopathic behavior that is the traditional Zionist within the Jewish community. Because for them, they don't want to be called a capo. They don't want to be called a self-hating Jew and all that stuff.
They
and
don't want to upset their mama. They don't want to upset their mother. They don't want to. They don't want to have an awkward Thanksgiving. I mean, or not Thanksgiving. Sorry, Passover.
Right,
You know?
but I was going to say that too, that it isn't that I do believe that most Jews, secular Jews in this country are not on board with what's going on. I do believe that. However, I do believe that most of them are still scared to say anything.
Yeah.
So that's the position. I was just at a whole reunion of people I went to elementary school with, a whole Jewish community, and none of them would ever say anything about this. They wouldn't talk about, like, that's just not, and these are not Zionists necessarily, this is regular secular Jews.
I also, and to conclude on this note, I also think it's a class war, just like everything else. The people who are the loudest in the room in support of Israel, no matter what they do, including genocide, are typically people from the affluent class. And that is something that is seen almost across the board in anything that we have. You know, this economic system is fine. Let's elect Kamala because everything will be okay. And it's the vibe. It's what we want. And the people who feel that way are people that really like the status quo. That's the bottom line. Daniel, if there's anything,
or it doesn't bother them too much. Yeah.
And that is, well, not yet. But if it does bother them, hell hath no fury like a suburban mother scorned.
Hey.
Anything that you're working on that you want to plug before you go, again, the links are in the
music stuff, like what's the more fun stuff you do?
I wish I was working on more music stuff, but yeah, I write musicals, but they need my attention, so I'll wait until I have something to share that. But I'll just say, badhasbara.com, I think, or patreon.com/badhasbara. We're on YouTube, we're on all the podcast platforms. Check us out. We have some great guests coming up, and
Yeah, I want to come on. I would be totally into coming on and chatting with you guys. We could have a nice kibbutz.
A nice kibbutz on the kibbutz. Yes.
Nice kibbutz.
That sounds like a great idea.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on, Daniel.
Lovely to talk to both of you.
Sorry that some of our people are assholes today.
No, it's just that Daniel flies a little too close to the sun with speaking truth to power, and that scares the shit out of me.
It's just annoying. It's just stupid. Whatever. Anyway, thank you for coming.
It's all good. People are typing on keyboards and pressing return, and that's all that's happening.
Yeah,
they're entitled to it. Good night, everyone.
I appreciate you. Thanks, Daniel.
People are going to be difficult, and I do think that Andrew
put him in timeout.
Yeah, Andrew definitely took it too far.
Why? But why was he? Forget it isn't even about a disagreement. You don't sit there and continuously tell a guest that they're stupid. Like, that's just rude. It's not even engaging conversation. I'm not going to entertain that. It's just mean for no purpose. And by the way, that's a stupid thing to say.
Yeah, well, Andrew, unfortunately, does believe that Trump is an inherent danger and that you must support Kamala. And that's okay. You're allowed to have your...
Then he must think I'm a moron.
Yeah, but the difference is that I don't call, and we don't call Andrew a moron because he chooses to say that I'm supporting Kamala Harris. He chooses to call us morons because we're not supporting her. And
no, I choose to call people that support Kamala tools. I will call them tools, but I won't call them morons.
I'm not calling them anything. I think people have the right to support who they want to support.
You don't come on and being nasty. Your dad is smart and you're stupid. Come on. Like, well, first of all, I would like to say that all of the mates seem pretty friggin' brilliant to me. So, and as somebody who has been affiliating with very smart people my whole life, like, I aspire to be like a dumb person in a room. And people like him and Aaron, and especially his dad, and even his sister, those are people that are really smart people. So I don't understand how you would be saying that.
Well, no, I can't do that, and I will get in trouble.
First of all, he can't do women. And then second of all, him doing people of color, as much as I loathe that term, is not a good, it's just not a good, it's not a good run. It's just not good.
Well, therein lies the word, Teresa. It is emotional intelligence. Getting your emotions in the way of you see, this is, Andrew, I appreciate you being here. We do. But this is not going to fly, man. Just stop. Like,
it would only matter to us if we thought Russia was an existential threat. I don't. So even if he were a tool of Russia, I don't care.
I'll tell you what is an existential threat is NATO thinking that they can keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and that that Russia's not going to respond.
No, he didn't say there was no globalist agenda. He said there wasn't some globalist Zionist Jewish agenda, as Jews have been being portrayed as having this global agenda for generations. That's what
I believe that there is. No, I believe that there is a globalist agenda, and I believe that there is a global Zionist agenda. But people still do not understand that, and you've pointed this out many times. That
do I support Kamala? Have you been watching this show? No,
Andrew, I'll make it easy for you. I don't support Kamala, and I will not vote for her because genocide is a red line, and I'm not crossing it.
No,
and that is it, and that's it.
Do I support the party I ran for? No, I do not. I support the Democratic Party that I thought I joined back in 1989, and that party is just a fiction in my head, apparently. And so, no, I don't support that party because that party is supporting a genocide.
And what JD
I'm
Party
just
had
not.
is, and what JD Party had is saying is correct. And that was
Yes.
the point that I was trying to make.
Yes.
And that's the point that I was trying to make regarding the Zionist Global Initiative. It's that it's not just the Jewish Zionist
Correct.
Global Initiative. It is the Christian, it's the Judeo-Christian Zionist global
Right.
movement, which is
Okay,
infinitely
you don't like my music.
bigger.
Why would you expect Democrats to vote for you? Well, I didn't expect anybody to vote for me. I was simply offering the Democrats of this district a non-filthy corporate whore option if they wanted it. That was it. It was an offering. I don't support the Democrats' agenda because they don't seem to have one other than pointing at Trump and going, oh, he's scary. That's not a policy plan. They're also supporting a genocide right now.
Andrew, the other thing that you're missing here is that there's a
Never liked
difference
Democrats.
between. Can I have a second? Can I please?
Sure.
So the difference that you have to understand is there's a difference between supporting and wanting the support of people who vote Democrat versus supporting the Democratic Party establishment. This is the thing that seems to get lost by a lot of people on the Democratic side, but doesn't seem to get lost on the Republican side. And you know how I know that this is the case? Because there's a lot of people who support Donald Trump and they don't support the far-right GOP. Look no further than the state of Arizona, where Trump is leading Kamala by 1 point, and yet somehow Kari Lake is trailing Ruben Gallego by, I think, like 12 points. So you tell me how that is such a significant crossover in the other direction, where they're like, I'm supporting Trump, but I ain't supporting Kari Lake. So recognizing that this tradition of we vote blue no matter who, no matter how bad they are, no matter how genocidal they become, the fact that Kamala Harris today reels out another batch of endorsements, this time from former Reagan staffers, because if there's one thing in this country we definitely need to be reminded of, is how we ended up here in the first place.
Oh, please. As soon as she bragged about her economic plan being approved by Goldman Sachs, I'm like, the end, bye-bye. Like, that's not, they are doing their typical Democrat thing where they're trying to compete to the right. And they're going to have the exact same result they got in 2016. And that's what they're going to deserve to get. So that's
and must no longer accept this idea of blind support for a party agenda. That is what has gotten us to this point. That is what has gotten us in this direction. And I want to point this out because listen, I came across this guy. I don't even, Colin, do you know this guy's name that went after Jill Stein on TikTok and was trying to point out why you're such a dumbass if you even think about supporting her and why voting for her is such a bad idea? It's
no,
like,
you don't like my music. She doesn't want to execute them. She wants to keep them incarcerated so they could work for slave labor.
They've got to make the state money, baby. I mean, that's what prison labor is all about. She did it in California. She'll do it at the state level. Trust me.
Yeah.
So believe me, she's really going to do it again. That's the problem. You know, we get stuck.
Oh yeah, no, they're bringing out an endorsement by Dick Cheney. He should be in prison. Like this is absurd. It is. It's really absurd. I will not in any way, shape, or form. I wouldn't vote for anybody that was endorsed by Dick Cheney.
No. And the other thing that you have to remember, and we caught a lot of heat for this, and this is the guy's name is Nick Powers. We got 2 clips we're going to play you before we close for the night. But this is important because these are the type of videos that are now coming out in mass. The attacks against Jill Stein are now being kicked into overdrive.
It shows that they're scared and they're desperate.
That does show, and that's something that, you know, more traditionally speaking, they would always say that it was Jill Stein's fault. But if you remember, guys, there was no heavy-handed attacks against Jill Stein in 2016 prior to the election. It was after the election where she got blamed for the results. Now there's the preemptive attacks going against her because the voters are definitely moving away from just lining up because one says line up.
Yep.
So, are things going to be different if Trump is elected? Probably not. But you know what? Eventually, you have to move away from what is currently in place because your vote and your voice matters. It does. If there is a political price to pay, eventually change is going to happen no matter what. And that is the realization regardless of who's in power, that they have to come and get it. And you don't get it after you get the vote, you get it beforehand. The concessions must come. Because let's face it, Kamala Harris is the president of the United States right now. Not officially, but right now, she's in charge. Joe Biden is just
not. She's not in charge of anything. She's not even in charge of what she wears. Please.
No, but people are looking at her like she's the president.
Oh, they can look at her like whatever they want to look at her. That woman can't even string 3 sentences together that isn't scripted for her. So I can't even fathom that she was a decent litigator, let alone be the leader of the free world.
And if you guys think that, think that Kamala can just walk her way into the White House without actually having to do anything to prove that she's capable of being the first Madam Commander-in-Chief, well, I got news for you. You should see the follow-up interview that she gave after the debate and what a colossal disaster that was. It's like, this is not going to be good for us. And let me tell you something, as crazy as Trump is, there's one thing that he actually does that somebody like Kamala and somebody like Joe can't do. Weak leaders, Trump may be bombastic and out of control, but he's not weak. And that's one thing that people, you want to talk about Putin, you want to talk about Xi, you want to talk about Kim Jong-un. They salivate at the prospect of dealing with a world leader that can't string sentences together. That's not good. So
and and look at what that did.
Yeah. Yes. The worst president of my lifetime, period.
Yes. And period. So that is right. Anybody can be president.
So here's Nick Powers and his infinite wisdom about why you should not support Jill Stein under any circumstances. But he's got reasons. He's got reasons.
Jill Stein voters and how they don't have a plan. And this is going to come in 5 separate points, so here we go. Point number 1. If it was actually about the genocide happening right now in Palestine, you would care about whether or not she wins.
It is about the genocide.
What do you mean? I don't understand what he's saying.
He's saying that this isn't about the genocide. You would care about whether Kamala wins or Trump wins. And I'm like,
oh, we care. We just understand reality.
The genocide is happening right now. Like, they really are trying to make it seem like there is no genocide.
No, what he's saying is that if you really cared about it, then you would care if she won or not, meaning Jill Stein. And that's one of the dumbest fucking things I have heard in a while, because just because you care doesn't mean that you don't accept reality. So we accept reality that Jill Stein can't win. We accept that reality. But that doesn't mean that the genocide isn't our issue.
And the other thing that he's not going to bring up is the fact that the Greens listen, I am not a fan of the Green Party under any circumstances, but you know what? They filled the requirements necessary to get $300,000 in federal funding for their party. And the Democrats put it in legal challenges to ensure that they didn't get the money. Like, this is the type of thing. Could you imagine if I say this to Andrew, I say this to anybody. Could you imagine how dangerous the Greens would be if they had $20 million behind them right now? Could you imagine what $20 million would do in terms of advertising?
Remember, you know what? That's annoying. No, I don't prefer Republicans to anything. And it has nothing to do with me losing. We've always spoken the same about both parties. If you go back, I have close to 4 years now of content where I have basically been saying the same thing about both parties. So no, I don't like Republicans because I lost. There are certain things they do infinitely better than the Democrats, but we've been saying that forever. So no, I don't feel like that.
The only thing that I can honestly say that if you really want to measure it if it's a measurable, way of doing so in the political arena, the Republicans are not as war hawkish as the Democrats are now, because so much of the neocons have moved over to the Democratic Party, who welcomed them with open arms. Yeah. So to me, that's a huge part of it. Listen, Andrew, be as salty as you want to be, brother. It does not. He may get into Jen's skin from time to time, but I could assure you, it doesn't bother me at all.
But what I don't understand is then why do you want to, why do people watch me? I haven't changed my position on this, whether win or lose or anything. So I don't understand that. This is someone who clearly suffers from Trump derangement syndrome.
And I will say this, Andrew.
That's a very unhealthy thing.
If you think Trump was too harsh for the neocons, honestly, brother, I don't know what you're looking at. I don't know what you're looking at, man. Let's continue.
No.
The 5% vote wouldn't be your goal, because her getting to the 5% vote will not do anything for what's happening to the Palestinians right now. The biggest talking point that Jill Stein voters have is the genocide happening right now in
Why are we
Palestine.
giving
What are
this
you
guy
doing
airtime?
about that? How does this reflect that goal? If your goal was Jill Stein winning the election, then I could sort of see that. But your goal is not Jill Stein winning the election. It's getting to the 5% so she can get more funding. Let's say she gets to that 5%. What's going to happen to the Palestinians if Trump wins? It's happening right now. People are dying right now. That 5% to help her next campaign is not going to help with that problem. Number two, if your whole point for that 5% is to get federal funding for the acknowledgement, who are you trying to get to know about Jill Stein who doesn't know about her already? Everyone knows about Jill Stein. Everyone does.
How do you
Why are
make a
we
statement?
giving this guy time? Like, I don't understand why we're playing this.
We're playing this because it's a reflection of all the messaging that's going out right now. Like this hot, they are coming
But I
after
don't
her
want to
with
stop it. Like, I
dagger.
don't want to put this out. Like, it's bad enough that this already went out once. Why are we putting this out?
What are you talking about?
I mean, we're promoting this again. It was already stupid the first time when he put it out, and now we're playing it again. So it's getting more airtime, and he's still just as stupid. That's
Okay.
what I don't understand.
I was trying to do a segment, but clearly you don't want to let me do it.
Well,
so.
no, I don't. Well, no, you, again, this is why we should probably have production meetings. But no, I don't want to sit here and give this guy airtime and talk about this and talk about other people talking about people. No. And finish your clip by all means. Let's watch this guy and give him props. Maybe put his title in the description so we can send
Maybe
people.
I'll just listen. I don't want to fight with you right now, but I almost feel like I should just remove the clip because this is just like you can't even give me like 5 minutes.
Oh no, let's play it. Let's listen to this guy. He sounds fun.
So I'm not playing it.
Okay.
So you get the idea, guys. This is what unfortunately is part of what we have to deal with. But the messaging is very clear that there isn't anything rational about the way that they're going after Jill Stein, because the truth is Jill Stein is merely just a symptom of a growing movement within a broken system where people are looking for something else. That's what's happening.
I like that they go after her. I do. First of all, it gives her, just like what you did for him by giving this guy airtime, every time someone like that goes after Jill Stein, it just gives her more airtime. So that's actually good. And the other thing is it shows that they're scared and desperate, which means that they're probably getting polling numbers that don't look good to them. And they know that they're going to lose Michigan.
Well, one thing that, and Colin, you can probably grab this and put it up there, whether it was Keith Ellison, whether it was any of the traditional shit libs, if you will, like George Takei.
Yes,
they're
all doing it.
It seems to be a coordinated effort to go after her, and it's all the same stuff.
Yeah. They have their group of people. It's the same as bots. They have their group of surrogate sycophants that are, you know, celebrities and whoever, and they send out their little message or have their little fundraising dinner and give everybody the talking points, and then they all go out and share it on their social media.
This is why we like you. This is why we like you, Metal. We appreciate you being here. And yes, but this is all that really does matter. You see, it's not a question of whether the Greens are going to get to 5%. That's not going to happen. However, do I think it's plausible that she could pull enough numbers in a couple of states that could actually tip the scales of the election? Yes, I do, especially in Michigan.
Yes.
There's no question that she can, and she probably is. That's
why they're doing this. But yet they're making it be a self-fulfilling prophecy because, again, they're building her up by doing it. So the truth is, whether or not Jill Stein, if guys haven't noticed, the Jill Stein thing in terms of the connection with the Muslim community is fairly more recent. They're abandoned Biden and now abandoned Kamala. If you notice, it's not go Jill. I mean, I'm sure there is crossover, but the concept is abandon them. So the fact that Dems are so threatened by her, I actually find it entertaining to watch. So George Takei says Jill Stein is a political cicada. Is that what that word is? What is that word? Oh, a cicada?
It's cicada or cicada. Yeah, it depends.
I say cicada. It's a bug. It's a locust. It makes the noises at night. They rub their little wings together and make the noises at night. So she pops up to chirp annoyingly every 4 years, then heads back underground. It's like they all get this talking. Well, that's how I feel about all. It's like they all get this talking point and they just follow the same, point of attack. And
to me, when I see that, all I'm thinking is, this is not going to help you. In fact, it's going to hurt you, because the more attention you allow her to get, the more people are going to be intrigued by the prospect of her being in the election. At least that's what I see. And then, of course, you can look at the fact that Mehdi Hassan decided to attack her because she won't call Putin a war criminal. It's like, dude.
Oh my God.
I understand that you're not with MSN.
To me, when I hear that about Mehdi, especially since he has been right, obviously very right about the genocide, but then he starts to show the real elitist colors. So then, once you've sort of made your stance about the genocide, then you sort of fall into line with your social class.
The other problem that you have to remember, and this is the thing about Mehdi, even though I think he's got a very brilliant mind and he definitely knows how to talk in front of the camera, this is a person who, if he was offered his job back at MSNBC, would take it in a flash, wouldn't even think twice about it, because Mehdi wants to be in the club. There's no question that he does.
Clearly.
And this is why people say what they say. When people show you who they are, believe them. That is the lesson that everyone should take when it comes to this political racket that I've been telling you guys about for years. When a person indicates that they're going to be adjacent to the power vacuum of the two major parties, it's because they want to be in the club. It's for the career, it's for the adulation. And even if you're somebody who was part of a very successful movie franchise and TV show, they are not immune to this same type of behavior, because in Hollywood circles and in Democratic elite circles, this type of politics speak, this is acceptable. This is considered good, and the way that people should go about doing business. Not about questioning whether Kamala Harris is supporting a genocide, which clearly she is and has made it very clear. And this is the thing I keep saying about Trump that people don't want to admit, is that he's the challenger. He can say whatever the hell he wants. He's not in a position of power. So when he goes on the debate stage and says, Kamala Harris is totally not a supporter of Israel, she's right, I am the biggest supporter of Israel, he got you. You want to talk about how you got Trump because you made fun of him for the fact that people leave his rallies? Okay, you can have that one, and then I'll raise you the fact that Trump nailed her ass by saying, you're totally not a supporter of Israel. I am the biggest pro-Israel person alive. Trump nailed your ass by getting you to play right into that card. And all the while, you know what he made you do? He made you lose more voters.
Well, he keeps pushing them to the right because he knows that that's the smart strategy. And that's what he does. Again, they're reliving 2016. It's sort of like the Dems. I'd say they're falling for it, except for the fact that at this point, I recognize that it's intentional. It isn't that they don't see it. They know. They just don't give a shit.
I would even say the same thing to Andrew or anybody else who's a Kamala supporter or just a Democratic supporter. Have you noticed how much more comfortable they are with acknowledging support from Reagan's staff, from Dick and Liz Cheney, from 200 former Republican staffers, including the support from Mitt Romney? It's like you will never hear them bragging about the support of anything related to labor or the activist class, with the exception of maybe the UAW. That's the only one that they can really hang their hat on that's really been maneuvering in the right direction. But I would say without question that this is a very precarious moment that we're in, very dangerous moment that we're in, because I do think that people have a right to be concerned. They don't want to look at
point out there are a couple of other anti-Zionist or anti-genocide candidates. You have Dr. West and you have Claudia de la Cruz. So those two and Jill Stein are your anti-genocide candidates, and that's it.
The one thing I will say to people who say that, well, it's they don't have a chance and this and that. Well, here's what I will say about Jill Stein compared to, let's say, Claudia de la Cruz, Dr. Cornel West, is that Jill Stein is going to be on virtually every ballot, just like Chase Oliver will be of the Libertarian Party. Although I do think for the first time since Ralph Nader, I do think that the Greens are going to probably get a bigger vote share than the Libertarians will this time around. I do think that they will.
But I still don't think it'll be enough. But I mean, I support Dr. West. I've been pretty clear about that. He is on the Florida ballot. And so that's what I'm going to do. And I can't believe that I get to live in a time where I get to vote for someone like that. Like I feel like privileged to be able to do that. And And
to the troll that came on our podcast earlier this evening talking about how we are not speaking out against what's going on in Ukraine. I have been saying since day one, as I say about every conflict, just show me the money and I'll tell you why this is happening. Well, very similar to BlackRock taking over the entire country of Ukraine. Why is that? Because Ukraine has trillions in natural resources in the western part of its nation that is desperately needed around the world. And Russia does not want to allow NATO or America to seize control of those assets, just like Maduro is doing business with China and Russia and doesn't want to do business with us, which is why we talk about going in and invading Venezuela, because we're trying to bring peace to the Venezuelan people. No, 25% of the crude oil supply on this planet is beneath their soil, and we want it.
That is
That's
facts
it.
right there. And that is facts.
Yeah.
I highly recommend, if you guys, I don't know, people ask me what I watch, but if you want to watch like what I think are the greatest assortment of foreign policy, ex-military, like Pentagon type people talking facts, watch Judge Andrew Napolitano's show, because he has a regular rotation of people like Matthew Ho, Larry Wilkerson, like the people that have been in there and really know their shit. And it's just every day he has somebody from that field. So I highly recommend it. But yes, we know that there's no chance for Ukraine. It's done. There is no more.
That's also great news for Dr. West. At the end of the day, Dr. West and Jill Stein should be working together. But that is, again, part of the problem that we see on the left. Now, what I want to conclude with is, again, I know people don't listen. And the fact that there are so many people on the liberal left that are actually continuing this an asinine, pipe dream that Trump orchestrated another assassination attempt on his life. It's like, guys, please get out and touch fucking grass already. Like, this is so insane. But what I do want to show you is that this is an interview that this gentleman, who frankly, I don't care what his name is, I just know that he attempted to assassinate former President Trump at his golf club
down here,
in West Palm the other day. And the reason that I believe that this guy did what he did, above all other reasons, is that he was looking to basically become another John Hinckley. He wanted the attention without question. But I also think that
this is the guy who they just caught.
This is the guy that they caught, and this is him giving an interview a little less than 2 years ago.
Okay.
Tell me who you are and why are you here?
I'm 56, from the U.S., from North Carolina originally, so live in Hawaii now, so flew all the way from Hawaii here. So the question as far as why I'm here, to me, a lot of the other conflicts are gray, but this conflict is definitely black and white. This is about good versus evil. This is a storybook, any movie we've ever watched, this is definitely evil against good. I mean, we're battling a situation here where, the Ukrainians and the rest of the world are caring and kind and generous and unselfish and take care of one another. And it's just a matter of, we need to stand up for that. That is the most important thing in the world, is just to show human beings that we're kind and we're caring and that we take care of one another and that the world is united so that we feed each other and make sure that, we all move forward as one collective whole unit. So, we feel the pain of one country's failure and their conflicts, and we enjoy the successes of other countries that are doing good, and we all work together. And for some reason, Russia does not grasp this concept that we're all one unit, and we have to get along and work together and be normal human beings. This is 2022. We have to work together. It seems
we have to work together to kill the Russian. I mean, I don't understand what he's talking about. What work together? First of all, his concept of the Ukrainians is clearly delusional. Like, that's not, Ukrainians are not like the peace-loving people that he's making them out to be.
Yeah, and he also is somebody who apparently was recruiting people to go over to Ukraine and fight. on behalf of the United States.
Yeah, Jimmy Zimzam, this was like within the past couple of years. But what's so incredible about also read Medea Benjamin's book, The War in Ukraine. It's a very good primer. It's small, it's to the point, it's a primer. But this is completely absurd.
Nelson, did you have to say that? God, these jokes are never going to stop. They're going to continue forever.
He does kind of look like a cat eater.
He does.
I don't really know what does a cat eater look like?
Somebody who looks a little unhinged and would actually hurt
so you have to see that there's this guy that made a video and a song and turned it into a song about they're eating our cats, they're eating our pets, and it shows Trump's, but he's singing it. It's so friggin' funny. It's just hilarious.
A leader in a country that does not understand the concept of being unselfish and being generous.
And what are you doing here in Ukraine?
My initial goal was to come and fight. I think everybody around the globe should be motivated to come here and support the Ukrainians and support the army, no matter what gender, age, anything. Everybody should be here supporting the army. But I'm 56, so initially they were like, "Well, I have no military experience," so they're like, "You're not an ideal candidate." So
they're taking everybody in Ukraine now. They're taking everybody now. If he wanted to go now, ironically, they would take him. They're very desperate.
Isn't it amazing, though, that he had never served before, but now all of a sudden he wants to serve on behalf of Ukraine, but never on behalf of the United States? Man, that brainwashing is real. It's real.
It's crazy. But, I mean, he really thinks he's helping.
So plan B was to come here to Kyiv and promote getting more people here. We need thousands and thousands and thousands of people here fighting with the Ukrainians.
And you're just the guy to sell it.
We've got 190 countries around the world, and we need thousands from all of them. If the governments will not send their official military, then we civilians have to pick up the torch and make this thing happen.
What impressed you the most since you are here?
My trip to Irpin was pretty emotional. So, going and seeing the buildings that were burned and destroyed and things of that nature. I think more emotional for me is just talking to the guys that have come here. When you talk to a 20-year-old guy that sold everything he owns to come here to fight, that is heroism. He's coming here to risk his life for humanity, for the Ukrainians. Guys that sell everything they own to come here and support the Ukrainians while others sit at home and do nothing. It's totally mind-blowing how we have this divide of people that are selfless and courageous and wonderful and willing to sell everything they own to come here and support, keep people from getting killed.
So you are working with the International Legion.
Yes.
And you are trying to convince people to help, to donate, and to join.
Yeah.
My final question is, what would you say to the people in order to convince them to join the International Legion, or to donate for it, or to be involved in the humanitarian aid to Ukraine?
Right. It's just extremely important, the whole thing. As far as joining the military, yes, if you have some military experience or know people with military experience, encouraging them to come and fight. We have units all over the place. So, there were some leadership issues initially, but we've got so many units available to us: Georgian, Crimean, Ukrainian, Territorial Defense, Foreign Legion. We have, so.
Who is putting this guy in charge of anything is the question.
Well,
and this is 2 years ago.
I don't understand any of this, but look, Crimea voted to leave Ukraine. They voted to be part of Russia. Now, the fact that the Ukrainians didn't abide by that agreement and the Americans, encouraged them to not abide by that agreement, that's a different story.
You could say that again.
I mean, this is this is absurd, this guy. So he's killing Trump because of the war in Ukraine. But I don't understand, but the Democrats are part of it. Why Trump?
Well, they
Trump
fear that if Trump gets
has
back in
better-
again, that he's actually going to end the war, get the kudos for it, but also screw BlackRock in the process. You see, this is all
Maybe
about
that's
money
for him,
and
because
power.
Ukraine is already done. That's done. The
Not
land
yet.
that Russia got, Ukraine is never getting it back. Never. They're never getting it back.
Unless
And
you want war, unless you want World War III.
it
Do you
won't
want
even,
World War III?
still won't even, it's not like this is what you don't watch the Judge Knapp show. You should, but Ukraine is done. This is it. And all they're doing is just using more and more Ukrainians to kill them off. That's it. And they're never getting their land back. They're only going to lose more land. Their incursion is nothing more than a pinprick to Russia. And they're screwed. Ukraine is done. They're going to be what's left, what they call a rump state. There's going to be nothing left there. And that serves them right, because the people that are now part of Russia actually voted to be part of Russia in the first place. So as somebody who supports the idea of self-determination, you know, you've got to recognize that those people wanted to be part of Russia. So like, how I don't like this whole thing is just so everybody's very misinformed.
As I have made very clear, as I think Jen has, and this is the truth about every war in the modern era, especially that's fought, whether it is in Ukraine, whether it is in Israel, and whether it could potentially be Taiwan. It's the same story every time. It's about money and power. It always will be, until we say it's not going to be anymore. Ukraine has trillions in rich natural resources in the West. We want them. Russia says no. We go to war.
Oh my God, I'm a Putin puppet. Peter, I'm a
There's
Putin
a half.
puppet.
There is a $500 billion in natural gas under Gaza soil.
Mhm.
And there is about 25 miles of Mediterranean waterfront real estate just waiting to be constructed, as Jared Kushner so eloquently described when he was a guest recently at the Kennedy School at Harvard. This is big business. This is the corporate state. This is the globalist initiative. You could call it the Illuminati. I don't care what you call it, but it is what it is.
I like
And-
Dialogue Works too. Actually, you're right. Nima is his name. He's great, and he does have good guests. Yeah.
You guys have to remember that when people say that you're a capo or that you're a useful idiot or a Putin puppet, again, that's because they don't have a valid argument. They have nothing to go on.
Well, they just have their side. They're skewing
Yeah.
their side. And you could say that about anybody at the end of the day, but you have to look at the people that have no incentive to lie. You have to look at who's telling what and for why, and follow the money. And so, no, I'm not a fan of Putin's. I don't, but do I find him any more appalling than any of our oligarchs? No. And I've always said, I don't care what language my oligarchs speak. I'm against all of it.
And this
So
is the
no,
same
I don't
problem.
think him. Yeah.
And this is the same problem with somebody like Neil Maxim, who says the same way Gaza voted for Hamas.
Exactly. Well, no, that's not the same. That's not the same.
But again, we don't support Putin. We support justice.
Okay. First of all, nobody on this show has mentioned Syria and Assad. You keep bringing that up. I don't know why. We're not discussing that today. And I have discussed it. I'm not a fan of ruthless dictators. It's not my thing. I have no, but
this is the same argument, Jay, that, yeah, no, the same argument that is made here is the same problem that so many people just refuse to acknowledge when it comes to, let's say, would the Middle East be better today if Saddam Hussein was still in power? Yes, ruthless dictator, but it's like the choice that it's the bilateral choice of between whether you want to have Assad in power or you want to have ISIS in power. So pick whichever evil you want, but that's what you're going to get.
Think about the rest of the world looking at us and saying, like, I can't believe they're supporting Kamala. That woman's horrible. Well, you know, for some people, compared to the other person, it's better. So it's like you're looking at these countries with such a small perspective. But no, I'm not a fan of Putin. I'm not a fan of Assad. But generally speaking, we are not financially supporting genocide in those countries and those countries are not claiming to be the sole democracy in the Middle East with the most moral army in the world that we're giving weapons to. So, yeah.
Teresa, thank you very much. Just reminding everyone, it's a full moon eclipse tomorrow in Pisces. No more arguing, Jen and Pete. You don't like my music. Be careful of having emotions. Well, he's a Canucky, so you know he's full of piss and vinegar to begin with.
I am not a fan of anybody being dictating over anybody, and that goes for everything. But I am not going to put somebody like Putin in the same category as somebody like Benjamin Netanyahu. I'm just not going to do it. Unless are there arrest warrants out for Putin?
Putin is
he considered a war criminal?
He is considered a war criminal, yes.
Oh, well, then he should be arrested and tried for that. Look, I'm not a supporter.
And so Jill Stein was given grief today because she would not call Putin a war criminal. She would not use the exact words war criminal. And it's like, okay, I guess she's a Putin puppet then. Guys, get a hobby, like please.
Seriously, it's not about whataboutism. Multiple things can be true at the same time. I also am very keenly aware that a lot of the problems that people see as cropping up now are problems that we set in motion years ago. October 7th didn't start on October 7th any more than Russia invading Ukraine started when Russia invaded Ukraine. That is not how this works. So we have a serious NATO problem. We have a serious empire problem, and a big amount of the world is sick and tired of it. So you're only getting your Go America nationalistic side interpretation of the whole thing. Well, you know, BRICS thinks otherwise. And as soon as they figure out a way to economically fuck us, it's game over for empire.
Oh, yeah, they will.
And that is what they're working on. See, China, they're working the long game and they're working the smart game. So we could use might makes right all we want all around the world until it all comes crashing down around us when they find a way to screw us financially. And it's only a matter of time. Right now, the BRICS nations, those nations together have a higher GDP than the G7. So they're already building up their whole little network there. And so we're going to fight it off as long as we can. But make no mistake, you are seeing the end of American empire. You have a front row seat for it. I personally am enjoying it. And no, that does not mean that I like Russia. But Russia is not the country right now that the entire world thinks of as a bully. Russia is not the country right now that has more than 800 bases around the world and is causing problems and poking everybody trying to start wars. That's not what Russia's doing. Neither is China. That is us. So, you know, do I think that Putin is good? No, I don't. I don't think he's committing a full-fledged genocide right now. And I don't think that what happened in Ukraine started when they invaded Ukraine. And I'm also against the whole concept of NATO. I don't like NATO. I think we need to get rid of NATO. I am so done with the whole concept.
Same. Yeah, no, NATO
so
is
that's
definitely
why I'm anti-NATO. We need to be done with that shit.
No, NATO's the war machine. That's what it is.
Exactly.
And that's why they fight so vehemently against it. And that, again...
I don't know. Why is Putin a war criminal? What is he charged with specifically? Does it have something to do with...
Well, they say that he invaded a sovereign nation. That's the charge. So.
Oh, okay. So that's... Well, again, you know, I don't know what the charges are. I'm sure that there are things that are war crimes because all of these people seem to be very fluent in that. That's the language they all share at that level is war crime. But no, I am not going to put him in the same category. When you show me Putin justify killing 14 pages of children under the age of 1, did you see that? That 600 something. Okay, so 14 pages of babies' names that were killed. If you show me something like that from Putin, then maybe we would have a similar discussion. But I haven't seen that. So, you know.
No, Neo, this is actually, NATO is why we're advancing towards World War III.
No. The biggest threat to world peace is us. Period.
Victoria Nuland admitted that she ended peace talks in Ukraine.
Of course.
That's us.
They sent
Let's
in
say that.
Boris Johnson like their little
Who did
friggin'
that?
lackey.
Remember, to everybody who's here, and we got a lot of new people tonight, and it's great to see you guys, and make sure that you are subscribed, hit the like button, share, because we are about to conclude our show for the evening. But remember this, guys, it is all about money and power. There is no ulterior motive. It's the same thing every single time. That's how it is. And it is very hard for people to wrap their minds around that, to think that the United States is not the shining city on the hill. We are not. We're not
No.
that. We don't even take care of our own fucking people.
Right.
You know, the one thing, as sad as this is, when you think about the empires of yesteryear, you even think about the worst one of the 20th century in Nazi Germany. Hitler took care of his people. We don't even take care of our people.
Right.
We have no health care. We have no guaranteed education. We do not have tuition-free trade schools.
We don't have a living wage.
We don't have a living wage. We don't have clean drinking water. We used to have 35%, or 1 out of every 3 workers at minimum were part of a labor union, which allowed there to be competition with the private sector for competition for a living wage. Today, 1 out of 10 workers are in a union. Do you know how devastating that is? Do you know how dramatically that changes the economics of this country? And I do commercial real estate. So I'm participating in the ultimate free market system. If you do not have labor as a counterbalance to shareholders, you are fucked. And we don't have it. We don't have it at all, which is why it becomes so much easier to push people into circumstances like war through advanced levels of endless pursuits of propaganda that gets perpetrated on the simplest minds of society and the minds of society who think that they know better. And why? Because the people in the ultra-liberal class are people that are living extremely comfortable lives, which is why it's so easy for them to say that, hey, let's go into Russia and blow them away. Let's go into Israel and blow away the Hamas. Again, it's easy to say these things because these are coming from people who would never in a million years lift a finger to defend this country. Wouldn't do it. And the people who get sent over there to commit these war crimes are always people who, generally speaking, don't actually want to commit war crimes. So we are playing the rich man's game. That's what we're doing. And it really speaks to...
Yeah, well, they're just playing Stratego. And everything, all these people are just collateral damage. And then you have people like Netanyahu, where it's just collective punishment and vengeance. And it isn't just financial. That if it were just financial, that would be one thing.
And John, I also want to point out, guys, if you have not seen the movie They Live, John Carpenter's excellent cult film from the late 80s, I highly recommend you check it out. It's as relevant now as it ever was when it first came out. In fact, I think John Carpenter has been a very prophetic individual in many ways in terms of his filmmaking. What I will tell you, John, about the commercial real estate ghost towns that exist, especially in places like California, is what RFK has said time and time again, which is BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard. We have a private equity crisis in this country when it comes to economics. When we're talking about the ultimate free market playing field, which is, of course, commercial real estate, there are no regulations. It is everything that Ayn Rand had preached and Milton Friedman had advocated for in academia. There are no rules. There are no laws. You can buy as much as you want. You can own as much as you want. And you can destroy communities because at the end of the day, everything's bought in cash and it's asset rich, which means they don't care if they make any money on these properties. They'll hold it. They will hold it for decades if they have to, until the market eventually swings back in their direction again. And all the while, these communities get destroyed. People, you want to know why suicide is so high in this country? Economic depravity is one of the biggest reasons why people end up killing themselves. And the people that own these mega corporations, they don't fucking care. Why would they? And they buy off all the politicians because let's not forget, California is super majority Democrat. And they're all bought off by the same people that buy off the developers in red states like Florida, red states like Tennessee. It's the same problem everywhere. You are a fucking fool if you still think that there is some benevolence between the two parties. There isn't. In some cases, you get the wedge issue, which doesn't actually affect all people every day. That's different. Democrats are better on abortion than Republicans are.
But not really.
But are they really?
They're not doing anything about it. So in theory, they are better on it. Absolutely. If you ask your run-of-the-mill Democrat, they'll have a probably, more in line philosophy with you. But the Democrats in leadership, they're not doing anything about it.
And Toys R Us, Chris, is a great example of many layers within the commercial real estate industry that have been completely decimated, because to me, I don't even think Toys R Us is the best example. The best example to me is still Walmart. And the second best example is Amazon. What they do is they go in and they destroy these towns. Who in the hell do you think funds these organizations? Just go in there and start them up. That's who holds the capital. Then you have the big banking system, which is led by Bank of America and JP Morgan Chase and Wells Fargo. The fact that Wells Fargo is still in business is incredible. And Wells Fargo is the very first national bank of the United States. And it's still standing today. But what they did to their customers, the amount of lives that they ruined, but nobody pays a price.
No, those people in those high up positions get cabinet appointments. That's how it works. Those are the people that end up being in charge in the executive branch. That's how it works.
And the issues that we're talking about right now, this is the real issues of society. These are the real problems that people have to face on a daily basis. You think Trump versus Kamala is the problem? If you still think that's the problem, you're fucked. You're fucked.
We're so far past that. We're so far past that. Just that the study that was done that showed how few people actually have their will made through policy, like how few people that policy actually responds to. It's like the 0.01% of the people. I mean, we already are not living in a functioning republic. Like, we haven't been living in a functioning republic possibly ever, but it's just so apparent now. And they're just so brazen about it. But I do think that it's like what I always say about flying too close to the sun. And I do think that we're watching it unwind, and I'm pleased. I am pleased.
And this is one thing that I will say. I do think that there is a lot of benevolence in the people that are pro-life. I don't think that they're all nasty, greedy bastards. I think there are people that really believe that
they're just religious zealots that need to keep their religious philosophies to themselves.
And that's always been my attitude, which is I am completely in support of people's right to practice their religion. Keep it the fuck out of the state. This is why I can never be a Republican.
And here's the thing. This is the truth about it, what I'll say to the people that are anti-choice. At the end of the day, if you support the concept of democracy, then you must accept that you're in the minority view on this issue. Otherwise, what you're saying is you're okay with the concept of the few completely controlling the majority. Because most people support choice.
Which is also why when you get somebody like our Kanucky former friend who apparently doesn't want to watch our show anymore. Okay, whatever. Thanks, Daniel Mate. You lost one of our primary viewers, but we'll survive.
Well, we lost somebody who was all pissed off that I wouldn't address the Ukraine thing. I'm like, we're not even talking about that. People are nuts.
A lot of people are. I hope we bring a little sanity to the political arena, because that's really what our goal is. If our goal is to transform politics into service, our service is to show people exactly what's behind the curtain. Who is the real Wizard of Oz? Is it this big, scary man like Donald Trump, or is it actually somebody standing behind the curtain that's a small little man like Mark Zuckerberg, who's a real power player in the grand scheme of things? Bill Gates.
It's a group of them.
It's another example. That's who runs the show.
The Davos people, the people that go to Davos, those are the people in charge.
Correct.
That's who's in charge.
Klaus
and
Schwab,
everybody else works for them.
The closest thing you have to Emperor Palpatine in society is Klaus Schwab. There's your emperor. There's your Emperor Palpatine. That's who does it. But no one in corporate media is ever going to talk about this because they're paid not to. They're paid to talk about. Why do you think the cat story in Springfield, Ohio, is going to be talked about verbatim for weeks. Ohio is a red state. This has no effect on the election whatsoever. But that's the point. It doesn't matter. Yeah, it's the same thing. Those days of the Democratic Party that once existed in the days of FDR, JFK, and LBJ, those days are gone. They've been gone for a generation. And there are still people holding on, thinking that it exists. Could you imagine Kamala Harris putting on a soft shoe and standing on a picket line?
No, I can't. I mean, all of this. Yeah, no. We don't have a Labor Party. And as much as Sean Fain would like to kind of contort and twist into a pretzel and make the Democratic Party fit that, just because I guess it used to fit it better than the Republican Party, I haven't seen them push through the PRO Act. I haven't seen them do a whole lot of stuff. And the fact that people are like raving about them with labor is, we're so used to crumbs. It's so pathetic.
And I will say this as an investor myself, the idea that Kamala Harris is being, and again, I am not saying she's dumb, because I don't think she's dumb, but the idea that she is out there proposing as one of her supposedly primary policy initiatives for her first 100 days in office is to push through a tax on the rich for unrealized capital gains. Do you know what that means? It means we're going to tax you for not doing anything.
Right.
And all I'm thinking is, couldn't you just restore the top marginal tax rate to 72%, which after all of the deductions would basically put the rich at paying an effective tax rate of about 25 to 30%? Is it really that hard? No, because the goal is not to do anything to change the infrastructure of the system. That's the point.
Yeah.
And that's what doesn't change. And the sooner people learn this, again, we don't have a show like Tim Pool that reaches 50 to 60,000 live stream viewers at a given time. We don't have that type of bandwidth. But then again, if we did, our channel would never reach that type of audience, because that message is not allowed to get to the masses. No. There's a reason why Jill Stein's message is not allowed to get to the masses. And listen, say what you want about Charlemagne, but he gave Jill Stein a platform on the Breakfast Club. Yeah, he did.
He did. But why did he invite on that other tool at the same time?
Let him. And you know what? By doing that,
it's like, if you really wanted to give them a platform, then you wouldn't do that. It's like he ended up, yes, he gave them a platform, but he also set them up, because at the end of the day, people like him fall in line for the Dems.
Maybe so, but you know what? Maybe that was a condition of her being allowed to come on the show. Now, I will say this. She made the most of her appearance. And the truth is, I wouldn't have even known, you wouldn't have even known about Jill Stein being on the Breakfast Club if it wasn't for AOC and Angela Rye going after her. There's no way you would have known about it. But because they decided to do that, they ended up making a complete ass of themselves double time, because now everyone's talking about it. And now they really can't help themselves. They're going after her like there's nobody. They're going after Jill Stein harder than they're going after Trump. And that's not being hyperbolic.
No, because it's the same as what they did to Bernie. They went after Bernie more than they went after Trump, because they're not as scared of Trump as they are of someone like her. But the difference is they were really scared that Bernie could win. I don't know what it is they're so threatened by her, other than the swing states where she is going to end up pulling votes from them.
Well, I do think that the permanent state, if there's one thing that is different with the permanent state, it's that the illusion that it really exists only matters when it comes to the consultant class. Now, occasionally, I think people probably break and go from one side to the other, but those are usually what you would call the hired guns. The technical word for that is the paid operatives. So paid operatives can switch from side to side. But when you're a consultant, if you will, if you're on the Democratic Party side, well, you're kind of looking for that 4-year job guarantee of the next, or even 8-year job guarantee of the next administration going into the White House. If the other side wins, you don't get a job. What do? You end up like Claire McCaskill and go on MSNBC and just be a talking head. And even that pays well. Look at Jen Psaki. Jen Psaki was the goddamn press secretary, and now she has her own show on MSNBC. Simone Sanders, who backstabbed Bernie Sanders and went to work for the Hillary campaign and then was on the Biden campaign, and now she has her own show on MSNBC.
Yeah.
It's a revolving door of one dirty fucking cesspool, and at the end of the day, has very little, if anything, to do with why things don't change. Those are not the people that are actually pulling the strings. We must identify the real problems. When we do that, change can happen. As we've said before, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you are subscribed. Make sure you
Yes,
click
and if you're interested, please be a member on Patreon.
/generational change for as little as $5 a month. You can become
And
a
it
supporter of
helps.
the Mighty Channel. And it does
It
help.
helps.
It does. And that's why we are going to continue to build up our network. And you know
we're
what?
currently building our new studio table.
We're going to
We
have
have
a
a
better
new
camera
studio table.
situation.
We're getting some new
Things
stuff.
are better. You know what? If we get up to, hey, listen, if we're consistently hitting 60, 70 live viewers at a time, we're consistently hitting a few thousand viewers at a time, things will grow.
I don't know. That's high. We don't normally get that high. I mean, I like it, but I feel like we're so stifled. We're so suppressed.
Yes, we've been purged. It happens. But that doesn't mean that we can't rely on you, the audience, who have been absolutely fantastic this evening. Metal, Pal Sear, JD Party Hat, Doug Grinbergs, which is very rare. Did not think I'd see you in a live stream. That's very rare. Nelson
Why?
Ortega.
Who, Doug?
Yeah.
He's been
Nelson
in here.
Ortega. No, he usually comments, but not during the live stream. Nelson Ortega, Jules T, Chris Garrett, Jimmy Zimzam, Me, Myself, and I, Henry Kajawa, Ray J, let's see, Mark J, Teresa, Carla Harrington.
Pal Sear, I think, is Syrian and was sharing some very interesting information, basically confirming media lies about different things about different things, Syrian and Ukrainian related.
David DeNuno, Holly Horn, John Nada, which I think John Nada was the name of the character that Roddy Piper actually played in They Live. Great film. Jay, appreciate you being here. Thanks for commenting. Richard.
Oh, Metal wants us to talk about the no tax on overtime idea. I don't know enough about it other than what you're saying. I'd have to read about it.
It's a really bad idea. And no tax on overtime.
If I research it and it turns out that that's something that benefits working people, then I would support it. If I research it and it turns out that it's something that hurts working people, then I'm against it. And my research will be thorough. So like, that's the difference. I don't know. I would need to understand how it works and what the end result is, because just because something sounds good up front isn't always necessarily the best thing. I'd have to research it. But if it helps working people, then I will support that.
Mario, Canadian Socialist, Neo Maxim.
Ooh, Syrian Palestinian American. Excellent. I love it when we have like the UN going on in there.
We had somebody from Brazil in this evening.
Yes, I saw that. And yeah.
CHSWV. Well, you guys are just like, this is like a super chat tonight. Although
I told you when Reed was little, he called Portuguese porcupine, and he came home and told me that his friend spoke porcupine. It was the cutest thing ever. Because they were Brazilian and they spoke porcupine.
Who else? You don't like my music, ain't here no more, but thank you for coming anyway.
But what I don't understand is that guy's been watching us for years. Honestly, I feel like we have been very consistent for the past 4 years regarding the partisan crap. So it's just so weird that all of a sudden you don't support.
How come you're not a loyal Democrat? R. Swartz?
But it's so funny. It's just how, can somebody be watching me for any amount of time and then somehow act like surprised that I don't support Kamala? I don't know. I just find that interesting, as if somehow I've ever been reserved about that. I feel like we've been pretty forthcoming.
I think so.
Yeah,
But
see, Teresa thinks porcupine's funny.
he cares a little too much for somebody who's not even an American.
Oh, who about Daniel?
Just
What are you
about you
talking
not supporting Kamala. Tom Coop,
That is kind of weird.
and the person who went ham, Sumo Sterling, I guess is your
Yeah, she
name.
left. Well, she left. She's pissed. She unsubscribed. She was all pissed off because I didn't immediately start barraging Daniel about the proxy war in Ukraine. Like, people are so ridiculous. People are so short-minded. Like, they really need black and white, good, evil, bad. Like, they cannot see multiple things at the same time. Like, it's unfortunate for them to go through life like that.
Danny Ferguson, and yes, we agree. Aaron Mate is also great. Let's see. I think we've covered just about everybody. This has been okay. Okay, here you go. Verdant.
Oh, they kicked him off of
Verdun.
BLM. Oh, hi. That's you. Look, hi from Brazil. I only know how to say thank you. I only know how to say thank you.
Anybody know how to say thank you in Portuguese? Put it in the chat,
I
please.
do. I know how to say thank you. Obrigado. That's how you say thank you in Portuguese. However, that's Portuguese. I don't know for sure it's the same in Brazil because Brazilian Portuguese is different than Portugal Portuguese. And so I know that that's thank you in Portugal. But anyway, but I do know people here that were Brazilian that knew what I was saying. So
And last but not least, one of our regulars, Ghislaine Conspiracy Theory. Great to see you. Great to see all of you guys. For Thursday,
I can't believe he got kicked off of. Wait a second. Can we talk about that? He got kicked off of Black Liberation Media. That's Renee's channel.
Who got kicked off?
You don't like my music, apparently. Because he was apparently, that's what Teresa's saying. The only show I've seen you don't like my music on consistently is Warrior Class on Black Liberation Media. And they said they kicked him off there. Used to be pretty crazy to get kicked off of that. They're pretty open.
I mean, look.
And by the way, Black Liberation Media is also a really good channel. I highly recommend it. There's several good shows on there.
So just so you guys know, we are going to have some big guests coming up. We've got some plans, if you will. I will tell you this now, Jen, for the first time, and I'll tell you guys, Norman Solomon will be coming back.
Nice.
To talk about his new book. It's going to happen at the beginning of October. It will.
I'm sorry. I have to say something about this. Hold on a second. Party hat. Don't eat the yellow snow. Thank you. Next. See? Because he's a Zappa fan, so he'll understand that. Oh, now they're talking Joe's Garage. I cannot believe that there are like a whole bunch of Zappa fans in the chat. That's really cool.
And working on Jonathan Randall and a few other people. But I will keep everybody posted. Like I said, we will be planning ahead. There will be other Pontificating with Pete episodes and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
But in conclusion,
what do we have on Thursday? Do you have something on Thursday?
We do not have it set just yet.
Okay. We'll have
we got to get Steve. We got to get Steve back on. It's been a while.
Love Steve.
Got to get Steve back on.
Love
All right. Smash that like button, share, subscribe, do all those wonderful things that we ask you to do. We appreciate you all very much.
Oh, wow. Chris, that's awesome.
We'll see you Thursday.
Shake your